welcome to Ger Lite number 4. This is going to be entitled Revealing the Love of the Ger. Okay, this class is going to be discussing various verses throughout the Chumash, in particular, the 5 books of Moses. Just to go ahead and rattle off a couple of the verses we're going to do. Genesis 15:13, Exodus 2:22, Exodus 18:3, Exodus 23:9, Vayikra 19:33, Dvarim 10:18, Dvarim 24:14, and Dvarim 26:11. You'll notice that those consist of Abraham, as he is referred to, Ger Toshav, in the land of Israel, the son of Moses, Gershom, and various verses of to love the Ger and correspondingly to please do not taunt the Ger. That's one half of the class. The other half is going to be a hybrid, bringing in the wisdom of King Solomon from Proverbs chapter 1, verse number 20 and 21, highlighted by the wisdom of the Vilna Gaon, and keeping true to the Ger Lite theme, we are going to leave out technical terms, direct references to the verses themselves, and try to use a bit of a hyperbole approach, kind of a pizzazz and enthusiasm to enlighten and highlight the concepts laid out, how to love the Ger, how to avoid taunting the Ger, how to get revelation of who and what a Ger is, how we come about this today, how we can view the verses in a good light and a bad light. Okay. With that said, let's just go ahead and get some ideas of the class. The verses we've brought forward about the Ger, they envelop certain issues. A lot of the things we talk about in the various Ger Lite classes in the Ger series is something called Ger Code. Ger Code is really none other, and it's kind of a funny word. We said we're going to get away from funny words, so let's get ahead and start now and get away from the funny words. Ger Code is really understanding the text with a hypersensitive perception. Okay, the mind tends to have gaps when we learn, when we think, and we express ideas. The verse will have a lot of technical terms and a lot of even fun terms. When Abraham says, I'm a resident dweller in the land, I consider those to be fun terms. When we come to those in the Torah, oftentimes it's a bit exciting. You know, when we get into the Bereshit Parshiot, and Abraham says, I'm a dweller and a Ger, like you in the land, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that tends to arouse the intellect. What does Abraham mean? And when you get into the Hebrew, even more specifically, when he says, Ger Toshav Anochi, I am a Ger and Toshav, that said arouses the intellect. The simple answer is always to say, in a very archaic and draconian tone, I am a resident dweller, I have an address, and blah, 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 blah. And we lose the what's called the tam, which is the taste of the verse. Now, on that level, if you approach the Torah along those lines, oftentimes you'll miss the little subtleties of the verse. You won't even maybe have an inclination to go into the Hebrew. You'll basically view it on a third grade level, never advance, and have a stagnant walk with God the whole time that you grow in Torah, or lack of growth in Torah. The inverse, obviously, is to try to grow in your understanding, in the Hebrew, in your relationship with God. The biggest detriment or merit based on which way you go. Are you going to love your fellow man or hate your fellow man? And as I know that sounds drastic. No, none of us want to hate our fellow man. We all want to love our fellow man. Even I think the most despised among us really seeks to love his fellow man. Nobody sets out, wakes up and says, you know what, I want to go and hate people today. I don't know if anyone actually does that. What it comes down to is there's a reason why people can come to hate or to dislike or find argument, lack of grace in his fellow man. And in terms from a learning Torah perspective, we can isolate these things kind of in a what's called a Litvak kind of way, like a stoic kind of intellectual point of view. Do you know how to learn, or do you not know how to learn? Are you seeing the truth? Are you seeing darkness? Do you even want the truth? I think that's a question that we're going to ask today. Do you want the truth? We all say yes. Everybody says, I only do crime because I want to know, where God is. I don't see God, and if I would have had God, I wouldn't have done this crime. And the flip side, I only had success in my life, one could say, because I had God in my life. It's a very basic, I think, issue in people's lives. Do you want God? Do you have God? Are you looking for God? Are you honest with yourself that, do you actually have God? So the proverb verse, as again, chapter 1, verse 20 and 21, is going to address this very issue. It's going to ask you honestly to ask yourself, do you have God? And if you do, how do you know? Where does it come from? What does it mean to you? And if you don't have God, it lays out the consequences in the following verses that come after it. And I think the Ger really is the quintessential piece on the board based on where you're holding, do you love God, do you know God, the whole question. Why? Because the Ger, in the text, relies 100% on your perception of little notes and signs in the verses themselves. The biggest example that we can come to with this, with Abraham himself, right? He says in the Hebrew, Ger v'toshav anochi. Right? We say, okay, resident dweller, okay, I'm with you. But when it says, I am a Ger, and I am toshav, right? This is like your first kind of approach with free will when it comes to learning. Number one, do you care? And here's the test to know if you care. Are you willing to consider, is Abraham here the first Jew? Or maybe is he the first Ger? Right? Because we know he's a first of something. That's apparent in the verse itself. That is the simple meaning of just, Bereshis Noach Lechacha. The basic tendencies of the mind will tell you he was the first of something. And then you're going to get all tied up, in the week of Lechacha, who was greater, Noah or Abraham? So wherever you go, you're going to tussle with this question. Who was Abraham? Was he great? Was he this? Was he a first? Was he a second? Why was he in the land? How did he come to the land? And along those issues, it can be superimposed upon yourself. Do I go to the land? Am I a first of something in my family, in my friends, in my community? Am I a Jew? Am I a non-Jew? Right? The non-Jew wants to know maybe, am I the first to convert in my lineage? Am I the first to not convert? All my friends have converted. Do I remain this thing called a God-fearer? Or someday they'll say maybe, am I a Ger? All these types of questions, Abraham is your guy. So when we get to Abraham in the verse, we want to ask ourselves, when it says Ger v'toshav anochi in the Hebrew, and you'll read it, it'll say, I'm a resident dweller among you. Is that already the first question that you need to start thinking a little bit differently? Is this a technical term? Is this an actual question and usage of terms? Or is it just kind of like, jargon? Or is it asking you, stop. This requires thought. Is there something called a Ger? Is there something called a Toshav? Is there something called Ger Toshav? Or again, is it just jargon? Because when you look at the Bible at face value, the tendency is to say jargon. Just blah, 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 blah. Words vernacular, I don't know. Words I don't want to know. Maybe I should know the words. Should I know these words? The first simple answer is yes, you do have to know those words. And the additional simple answer is not in a technical sense. It's not the kind of thing that you want to say, okay, Rabbi Katz said I have to know these words, so now I'm going to run out and buy 5,000 books. I'm going to memorize all the words, make a huge list. I'm going to convince myself that I want the truth, and I'm going to be prepared for class, And I'll know the words as Rabbi Katz brings it up. That's already missing the boat. When we're talking about knowing the words, we're saying, just even look up the word. You just go to a dictionary and look up ger. And you'll see in your own research it means, at least 5 or 6 things. And what does it mean, toshav? And let it build. Let it build. I like to do this in English for fun. And a lot of times we talk in English and we use words and we think we know what they mean. Even here's a challenge just off the top of my head. Look up the word neighbor. Do you know what a neighbor means? I doubt you do. I doubt you do. You'll say it's the guy that lives next door. But I guarantee you, if you were to go to the computer right now and type in neighbor, meaning, go to Merriam-Webster, it'll have 3 or 4 definitions that aren't a total shock to your system, but enough of a surprise you'll say, I never thought of neighbor along those lines. Maybe, I'm guessing, but comrade might be one. Type of a friend, a type of synonym, a related word to friend. Right? I may not necessarily be friends with my neighbor, my physical dweller next door. So maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But there's many ways of cutting this up. Once you get to that, then you can go check out the etymology. Where does neighbor even come from? Why do we use these words? Just to prove a point without being totally accurate or correct, when you look up the etymology of neighbor, let's just say it comes from ne and bor, right? B-H-O-R, which is a Nordic term for a cozy man, right? Ne comes from camaraderie, right? I'm making that up for context, but the point is, you can conceive from the etymology where it comes from. Oftentimes it comes biblically anyways. We bring the Hebrew and the biblical to bring a point of how to define terms. So even start getting in the habit of looking up words for fun, because it is fun. So when you start to define the technical terms, you can put them together and make building blocks, and you can get the technical mindset, out that, if I don't have the entire Talmud in my head, then I cannot understand what's being spoken of here. That's what one might think. But when you get into a habit and a rhythm of looking up words, you'll realize, number one, the Talmud is just one aspect of using the words. More importantly, you will gain a grasp and understanding of the words when you make them your own. You can actually make the words your own. I don't know if the Ger Torah that we've brought down is any different than of making it my own. Making it my own meaning I looked it up, I worked it out, I researched it over years worth of time. Right? But if you don't do that, you take the parroting method, just repeating what you've heard, because the guy that taught you in the class probably did the same thing. Right? Just giving over what he had heard, which is not wrong, but it's a narrow-minded point of view. Right? It's a very specific point of view. That's like saying that you want to be a sports enthusiast and you'll only watch American football. So the idioms offered in American football are not universal for all sports. And if you were to use the word striker, for example, soccer, it has one meaning. In punching and boxing, it has another meaning. I think every sport has a concept called striking. And it's different in every context. So when you gain that word in your lexicon, in your own brain, the word strike in association with sports, you can become a master of its usage. And you can learn which way to use it and when. I think that's true probably for any language or spoken skill. Thus, the ger is, again, no different. When Abraham is a resident dweller in the archaic English, he's a ger and he's toshav in the archaic Hebrew, and you come to say, maybe there's something here. And the bottom line answer is, Abraham was a ger. He is your world's first ger, by unanimous decision amongst every rabbi that ever wrote about it. You will never find Abraham was the first Yehudi, the first Jew. Not written. The only place that things like that are written are in Hebrew school for secular kids in America. I received the same thing myself. That was the first education I ever learned at 10 years old, Hebrew school in Dayton, Ohio. They wrote on the chalkboard, Abraham was the first Jew. Okay. I agree. I believe you. And I thought until my early 20s, Abraham was the first Jew. And so when you get to yeshiva and you look it up, and you find out we're all of a sudden learning he wasn't the first Jew. I wouldn't go as far as to say they taught he was the first Ger either. That's already asking too much. But they did not teach that he was the first Jew. I remember one of the biggest shocks I had in my yeshiva time. There was a big rabbi in my yeshiva by the name of Rav Berenson. Moshe Yitzchak Berenson. He was a tremendous Torah scholar, and I think I understood that Abraham wasn't Jewish on my own understanding. But I didn't want to rely on my own understanding. And I asked him, I was a young guy, and I said, Rav Berenson, is Abraham Jewish? He said, I don't think so. Because the funniest thing is in yeshiva, the more scholarly you become, the more you can ask those kinds of questions. Right? The more kind of ignorant one is, the more they get offended by those kinds of questions. The more unlearned you say, is Abraham a Jew? You'd say, what? What do you mean? How can he not? Right? But the more scholarly things, wait a minute. I remember from the tractate Yevamos, by the way, I think it's page 60 or 61. Don't quote me on that, please. But there's a discussion in the Talmud, the level of ritual impurity to Abraham. Was it considered a Jewish impurity? Because only from Sinai onwards did the impurity come in as it is governed today by Torah law. And they actually render over there, he was not Jewish. He did not have Jewish impurity, which is consistent with all the views that Abraham was the first Ger, which, by the way, the commentaries do say that. Now, how does the Tosfos commentary of the Talmud know that? Tosfos is a commentary to the Talmud. The Talmud was speaking along these lines. The commentators understand the Talmud that Abraham's not going to be Jewish. How do we know that? That's the issue we want to tackle. How do we know? By simply reading a text and not having lived thousands of years ago, or having had Moses himself teach me the Torah. How can I learn the Torah of Moses today and still come out with the same conclusion? Abraham was not Jewish. We have to look for things in the verses themselves. And the Bible commentators suggest there are several kinds of realities inside the verses. There's always the realities of the rabbis, right? Oh, this verse obviously was speaking of the impurity of a dead guy. How would you know that? And the answer is you're not supposed to know that. The rabbis play in their own reality. And those realities are true when in light of the meaning and context in a rabbinic sense. But not everybody's a rabbi, and not everybody plays in a rabbinic sense. I'm not playing in a rabbinic sense. You'll say, how is that possible? You're a rabbi. The answer is that when the rabbis of the tradition would speak about impurity, they want to know, will I become impure if I go to the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham was buried? Now that's a rabbinic thing to know. But that's not my job as a rabbi to know that. Right? Because today everybody's impure. We don't have the red heifer. We don't have the temple. And it's strictly a theoretical analysis to discuss in yeshivas. Which, don't get me wrong, it can be done. I've done it. I do it. But teaching the people on the internet and the Gerim on the level of Tumas Mace of Avram Avinu, whether he's Akum or Ger, in accordance of Adam Arishon and the Kimaris Machpelah in the city of Hebron, there's no nafkamina whether it's shaykh to the Dor Azot. Right? I know you don't know what I just said. That's the point. If you're not prepared to have that discussion, it doesn't need to be said. And it also doesn't need to be said that if you're not having that discussion, then it doesn't mean goodbye. Go away, we're not talking to you. There's other levels to talk about. So we can have those discussions just on a different wavelength. Right? So we're not looking for signposts and hints in the verse on the rabbinic world, but there's also a universal world. The universe wants to know what's going on with Abraham. And the biggest signpost blinking in front of our eyes with Abraham is, what is this thing Ger? What is that? What is that? Is that a word I should be afraid of? Should I learn this, and when I go to the Talmud class and they say, oh, A ger. Well, you have to know what a ger toshav is, but we don't have it today because there's no yovel, and only when there's yovel, and blah, 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 fence, Torah the fence of Torah, and next thing you know, you say, ugh, who wants this? How was class, Bob? Horrible. They said that I'm not a human, I don't exist, not until the Jubilee, I may be impure like Abraham, but I might not, I'm an idolater, but I saw the word ger, and they couldn't tell me what it meant. They said that it means I'm a stranger, an alien, a convert, a dweller, a resident, maybe a Shabbos goy too, and they couldn't quite tell me what it meant. I might be impure if I touch myself. I'm not quite sure. And the rabbis say, come on, Bob, you got to try harder than that. You have a bad attitude. You should come back a little more positive next time. Right here, take a l'chaim. We're having a Suda's mitzvah today. I mean, how can you be enthusiastic when this is the jargon you hear back in the give and take of the yeshiva world? There has to be a more common ground, medium ground between the rabbinic world and the human world, the universal world. And the answer is, this is what the Vilna Gaon is getting at in our verse we bring from Proverbs. Right? The third type of person, he brings three types of ways of being turned off of Torah. Number one, you simply want to sin. You simply don't understand that sinning is wrong. You think it's good. Right? TV says, hey, look at a half-naked woman holding a beer. Go buy a beer. Okay. Right? That's already one that takes you out of the realm of Torah. Number two is idle time. Right? You convinced yourself that sitting in town, sipping a fine cup of coffee, speaking about the weather is a very productive endeavor. It isn't. That's self-explanatory. And the third one, which is most proper to speak about now, it's just too hard. So they mock and make fun of the Torah, right? And how can you expect it to be easy? You're sitting in Talmud class and they're doing this, the that, the Toshav, the Yuvli, the Rambam, the Rif, like the what, the who, the he? So the answer is, the Vilna Gaon says, don't freak out. At that point, everybody gets there. It's hard. I don't know what's going on. I just want to learn about Abraham. You're making it super difficult. I don't know all this stuff. I just came in yesterday. I thought I was a ger. You told me I'm an idolater and that I don't even exist. The answer is, look for the one in the room that pulls you aside, like the grandfather wisdom that we all want. The Vilna Gaon tells you what the grandfather wisdom is. It's the one that says, come here. Listen, these are technical terms. Don't freak out. But even more so, if you oscillate the term, it no longer is a technical term, and it becomes a conceptual term. It has light. If you look deeper and allow it to reveal itself, the words actually have properties other than their technical sense. It's like saying, study of mankind is a humanoid, right, or a Homo sapien. But, that's like, you can't get a perspective of mankind from Homo sapiens and humanoid theory. Just go and sit down and talk to the guy. So just by understanding that the things themselves in Torah, the words, the properties, the principles, are all sweet by definition. And all you have to do is start talking about it, allow yourself to talk, even just say, I don't get it. How is it sweet? Now you're asking a question. Instead of saying, am I a ger, am I impure, am I an Abrahamite, am I this? Just say, why is this sweet? And it's not a chutzpahdik challenge to ask such a question. The Torah has a very simple law. A vessel that is full can contain its contents. An empty vessel cannot contain its contents. That's how a divine vessel operates. The vessels of the secular world, an empty vessel contains and a full vessel doesn't. So here the full vessel says, okay, there's a ger. Whatever it means, Abraham and his thing. Rabbi, why or how is that sweet? But to me it's not. I'm not sweet or loving this at all. In fact, I don't understand it and it's quite bothersome. So bring him aside and say, listen, I'll show you how it's sweet. Let's go look up Ger. Let's go bring out the Ger. Let's go talk about what a Ger is. Let's talk about how Ger is a linchpin to bringing the coming of the Messiah. I mean, the nation of Israel is completed once the Gerim are grafted in for all of time. And for those following along at home, that's how Rabbi Nachman, in his major work, Likutei Moharan, brings the idea of Ger. So that, again, where the rabbi is drawing this inspiration is in the verses themselves are little signposts that you, the layman, are blind to. You don't pay attention to the before the word. For example, I'm from Ohio, and everyone knows Ohio State. But the Ohioans tend to call it the Ohio State. So if you don't notice that the you'll say, hey, Rabbi Katz, where did you go to school? Oh, I went to the Ohio State University. You'd say, okay, you said the, but it's not really a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. That is my arrogance and pride speaking. When I use the, I'm saying I'm better than you at Miami, Cornell, UCLA. I am better than you. I'm from the Ohio State. So if you're keen on that word, you'd say, oh, this guy's an Ohio State guy. I got to give him a jab. You're not going to let him get away with that. But if you're ignorant of it, you say, okay, he went to Ohio State. He's a nice guy. They have a nice campus. The Torah is filled with these kind of things. The letter hey, which is the article meaning or connoting the word the. How about the hey at the end of a word? The missing letter vav. The Torah is filled with these little things. It says that Rabbi Akiva would find new avenues of light and law based on the actual script of the letter. How does that come about to be? It comes about to be, as the Vilna Gaon mentions in Proverbs. There's a very simple way of looking at this. You, me, everybody else, we're looking at what does the Torah say? What is the simple meaning? Very simple approach. I just want to know what the book says. I want to have a relationship with God. Can you let me know what it says? Okay, it says Abraham, for example. Abraham was a ger and resident dweller. Okay, I'm happy. I'm going to go tell everyone, hey, guess what? I learned about Abraham. He was a resident dweller. And now there's two guys you're going to go tell this to. The one who destroys your faith and the one who builds your faith. The one who tears it down and says, well, he was the first Jew. You're not a Jew. You should go away. And he learned it from the guy that learned it, from the guy that learned it, because they learned in the verse that somehow we're going to interpret the signposts. He was the first Jew. And as the Vilna Gaon brings out, that mindset of not wanting the overall big truth, settling for a smaller slice of the pie, he's going to be the argumentative person. Because I learn it my way, I'm right, and you're wrong. Anything you say can and will be held against you. And that's where you get the division amongst the authorities. He might not even be wrong on a certain sense. Right? Abraham may have been the projected Jew. Right? The pre-Sinai ger that says, if Sinai were today, I would be Jewish. I would go through Sinai as a Jew. And I want my kids to be Jewish. And we find Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, 70 souls, Egypt, coming out, accepting the Torah. There was a path of Judaism there. So yeah, he was the first Jew in that respect. But literally he was before Sinai. And thus he was projecting as a ger looking forward that he was Jew-ish instead of Jewish. So there is basis and not a total insanity to make such a claim. But at the same time, you can't ignore reality either. When I was in shidduchim and dating to get married, when I was back in that parsha of my life, in my mid-20s, a lot of the women that I would date would say, okay, when you're a nice guy, what do you want to do with your life? And I was naive, and I said, I want to be a rabbi. They said, that's very nice of you, but you're an American, you're a Baal Tshuva, you're in Sfat, probably not going to happen. Have a nice life. And you see, I was right. But back then, I can't prove that. I was an ensign. I was a bacher. I was aspiring. In my heart and soul, I knew what and where I wanted to go and to be. But you can't show that. But yet, you look at Rabbi Katz of 2015. He was that bacher. A lot of the parts of me, who I was then, is who I am now. So he was a ger and he was a Jew for the sake of the comparison. Right? I was the rabbi and I was the non-rabbi. Both were correct. And looking at my life today, I'm very much a rabbi, but you can make a case and an argument, he's very much ger. Right? To teach the ger and work with ger, I have a certain part of ger in me. Right? King David says in Psalms, I am a ger. Abraham says, I am a ger. Kind of two ends of one long spectrum. By the way, the Psalm 110, it says, you are a priest forever by my word Melchizedek, is a reference to both Abraham and David. Because they both have a certain similarity in the words used to have a connotation of who they are. So now we're looking for the simple meaning. And we know there are signposts there. Some will take the small road, some will take the large road. The basis of growth brought by the Vilna Gaon is, do you want the truth? Truth will bring you to awe, to a reverence of God. And he says that once you're looking for the simple meaning, and you really want, you're talking about it, you're doing your best, you're trying, but you're in first gear, trying to get out of first gear, and when God sees you're going to overheat, he says, hey, look over here. Look at this. What is that? Like, look at this. And it says by Abraham, he was the first ger. Total divine providence. You were working on it. The guy came up with the book and he said, hey, Bob, are you a ger? He says, I don't know. He says, well, look what I found. It says Abraham was the first ger. Wow. How'd that happen? That's a property of Mazel proper. The books that speak about Mazal say that even a Torah scroll is bound by Mazel. God brings you the Torah even today by divine providence. That's how you get the hint from the hand of God when you're far away. Because you're not yet versed in Hebrew to get it on your own, to think, where do I go get this information? God hints it to you. And the hint is a fractal. He hints it to you. He brings the guy to you. It's a hint. God's here. Hashgacha pratis, divine providence. You look in the verse, more divine providence of the same flavor. And your eyes are open. Look at that. Abraham was a ger. Now the hint and the simple meaning come together. Abraham's a ger, his first ger. Now you're talking. Now you're popping, walking, talking to rabbis. And they say, hey, this is fantastic. I didn't know that. You say, yeah, Rabbi, go look. It's in this commentary. And he's thinking, wow, this non-Jew knows more Torah than I do on this. This is insane. This is tremendous stuff. So now the rabbi is revealing aspects of the allegorical, the drush. Now you guys are talking. And he's saying allegorical and all this stuff. And now his simple meaning changed. The hints are going off in his head like fireworks. He's extrapolating things he never considered. And when that keeps going, now you and he will go and talk, and the wisdom will keep coming back onto you, as Vilna Gaon explains also in Proverbs. The part of wisdom is not that I have it all, that you get a little bit, and then you go spread it. That's called musar, changing people's minds and attitude, shifts in consciousness. Then you're inspiring them to talk to you, and they will give you the missing elements that you need to even grow more. Remember, Mazel brings the Torah. That's where the secrets of the Torah come out. Then you understand what is a ger, just by simply working it out and talking about it. Then you have a full, what's called pardes, an orchard of Torah, pshat, remez, drush, sod, and the Vilna Gaon says it's not that. It's actually remez, sod, pshat, drush. You thought it was simple, then the hint, then the allegorical, then the secret. Then the Vilna Gaon apparently says, no. It's the hint, then the secret, then the simple, then the allegorical. Or sorry, yeah, that's right. And we're saying, no, both are not correct. Just you are a dot in space. And don't get bogged down by the map, because the map will get you lost. Ironically, you are a human. You will always go for the simple meaning. When you grow and you want the truth, God will open your eyes. You will find the things in the verses that set your soul in motion. Then you'll be able to talk about it a lot. The more you talk, the secrets of your soul, where you connect to the Torah, will be revealed, and that is a full system of learning Torah, repentance, the wisdom will come to you. That's called learning Torah. That's called the revelation of God, all for the sake of simply wanting the truth, which is the opposite of moaning and groaning, how hard it is, and it's not sweet. And how does it all begin? Once again, simply just want it, talk about it, be involved. God will do the rest. But you have to continue all the time, measure for measure, step for step. You have to be willing to work with God, to look for God. Don't be distant from God. Because the more distant you go, then that helping hand doesn't reach. God can't reach you. It's as if you're blind and deaf. You are the very idol that you serve. In the most figurative sense and literal sense. You are an idolater, whether you're a Jew or a non-Jew. When you're far from God, you're serving your self-pleasures, you're far away. And that really, again, brings us back to the whole difference. Are you loving your fellow man, or are you taunting your fellow man? If you're far away, you'll say the non-Jew is, the words we know, in a derogatory sense. When you're close by, and the wisdom is coming to you, then you can say, how can I not love this guy? There's no reason, in the most literal, logical sense, there's no reason not to love him. He's part of Israel, he's your brother, he's a ger, he's, every word you want. The taunter will say he doesn't have a soul, he's an idolater. The lover will say, of course he has a soul, he's a house of Israel. And the hints in the Torah learning supports this, and the lack of learning supports this. The chastising of your fellow man in argumentative nature is blind of these things. God is not pushing help into his way. The one that wants peace, God is helping him, which is ironic because the peaceful guy understands this guy's point of view. He understands that there is an aspect of how the non-Jew can be seen as an idolater before he returns and does repentance and enters the congregation of under the wings of the Shekhinah. He understands that. But the misfortune is that the limited view can't see this view, because his eyes are not open. God has not sent him the sources. He doesn't see the verse. He sees a dogma. He sees draconian law. Frankly, he sees Sharia law. And as we all know, with Sharia law, it's a hypocrisy. He's doing things that are antithetical to Torah. So there we have, there's a whole Torah. We see a little lens. And the concept of there is a big picture, but I just don't see it yet, that's what we've been calling the Torah of Shem. Right? Let's call it the non-simple meaning. The part that God has to open your eyes to it. That's what Shem was the master of. Now Moses was a master of it too. That doesn't need to be said. Moses wrote the Torah, but Moses wrote the Torah with layers and levels of revelation. But the what's called Torah of Moses is called the revealed aspects of Torah. The ones that you can read the simple meaning and you can't get it any other way. Don't steal. No one will get that wrong. But aspects of Ger and this and creation, there's levels of understanding. And this is where the Vilna Gaon says that's called the Torah of Shem. The mystical, secretive, hidden level of the Torah, called Torah's Nister. The part that's not revealed. You have to work and strive and grow and want. Find the truth. It will be revealed to you. Spiritually, Shem is the deeper level of Moses. And with that, we'll conclude the Ger Lite number 4. The Ger Lite number 4 has to do with Ger Code revealed, right? Finding the hints in the Torah. They're revealed through the truth, coming to the truth, wanting the truth, opening your eyes, growing in revelation, to when we learn the Torah, we'll be able to understand who was Moses' son, Gershom. Gershom. What does that mean? Ger Sham. He was a ger there. And the anti-revelation view will say, okay, he was a resident there. And then that brings, the bitter view, the hard to understand. The lover of Torah will say, Ger. He dwelled there. And Sham is Shem, as in Torah of Shem. And you start to look and analyze, and all of a sudden Moses' entire world erupts in this revelation of wisdom in song and dance within the realms of Torah. Moses stops being this technical dinosaur that we just don't know. And he becomes a revelation of light. Because the signs are there. But again, could you take Moses on a very simple, narrow point of view? Absolutely. Is it wrong? It's not totally right, which is called lo nachon. It's you can do more, but those that don't do more will argue it to the moon. While they're sipping their coffee, wasting time, and being basically being enveloped in hypocrisy to the simple scholar who's new and wants to learn. And this is the clash. One doesn't believe that the hints are even there. The other one's dying for the hints. He knows in his soul something's here. And that is the clash. That is the clash. And it all comes down to what the Vilna Gaon mentions. It all boils down, do you want the truth or not? If you want the truth, you'll get the truth. God will give it to you. And the whole time, to walk in relation with God, the question is, how much do you want the truth? If you want it, you will get it. You will understand such things as who was Abraham, who was Moses, who was his kid. If you don't want it, you don't even know these questions exist. And you'll be arguing things that are fruitless and sterile. And I'll close on this point with Ger Lite number 4, the idea of revealing the love of the ger. Do you love the ger or do you taunt the ger is one question that decides that oscillation. How much do you want the truth? Thank you very much. I'm Rabbi David Katz, and this has been Ger Lite number 4.